Thanks for watching The Instant Reaction. For full episodes of the Cannon Podcast, sign up as a YouTube member on this channel or go to patreon.com/thecannonpod.
Welcome back to The Instant Reaction, George. Before we do anything else, because that nearly got spicy there, let's talk about the most important part of this entire game. And don't talk about central running power. Don't talk about anything else. We need to look at this. Look at this. 97.5% field tilt, lads. We won.
Oh
Yes,
my God.
okay, we might have won on goals as well, and this might have been half-time, but we won on field tilt. 97.5% field tilt at half-time, boys.
Has there been a higher field tilt win?
Listen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That is nothing else matters. I don't care if we win if we win the league, nothing else. And no, League Gunner, I'm not joking. You can take this out of context. I'm not joking. Field tilt is the most important thing. Hello, George. That nearly got spicy, didn't it? Nearly got spicy. Lots to talk about. Lots to unpack in that game.
Mm-hmm.
But overall thoughts, please, because as much as the first half was a little, well, no, it wasn't a little, was frustrating, and I found a lot of issues cropping up again. I was really pleased with how we managed to adapt in the second half and change the game around. And I think apart from a little scare at the end, we've been to that place before and not got results. So I'm, overall, not over the moon, but pretty happy.
I just thought it was a professional performance, fundamentally, and I think that if you thought that going to Forest away with our record and, the way that we had approached the game recently would have been, easy game, then I think people are kind of in this place, mate, where we're so far behind the title challenge that if it's not a 5-0 or 4-0, it's kind of done.
Yeah, it can't be a good win. Yeah.
And it can't be a good win because, I look at the first half performance, and as a whole, I just saw a team defend 11 players behind the ball. And yes, there was some decision-making from certain individuals. I think there was some points of improvement, particularly in our tempo. I didn't think that Zinchenko had a very good game in the first half in terms of slowing our tempo, in terms of early switches out to Bukayo Saka, who I finally thought looked fit. When was the last time that, Bukayo Saka looked as fit as he did today? I thought that there was an enormous amount of running power that he carried all match. And there was just a period in that first half where instead of checking back to recycle, he takes his man on the outside and just continues running. And it was almost as though he just kept pressing the gas. And I thought, that's the Bukayo.
A bit of separation coming back to his game, which is important.
It's very important. And of course, I can't end this little summary on Emile Smith-Rowe, who I thought had a phenomenal cameo here. And I thought, especially given the fact that nobody called, except for me, that he would start very soon, I thought that he did well beyond just the Emile Smith-Rowe things. I thought that he did a really diligent job in the block. I thought that he was following his marker quite well. Still feel he's apprehensive, which is normal, I think, having not started for so long. There was definitely moments I was like, okay, you're receiving on the half turn, go. But I think towards the end of the first half, I was really seeing the pass first, and he was the only person in possession for me in that first half that, despite it being really frustrating, was at least when he got the ball, his first thought was forward. So it was a great performance by him. Saka, I thought, probably edged for me the man of the match, to be honest with you. And Saliba, it's so unfortunate that goal happens because I thought he was flawless against Wood, and now when he up until that point, I think he makes a mistake. So does Zinchenko, by the way, in terms of the aerial duel. But I think it's more on, Saliba's ability to stand strong in that challenge. Like, he's got to do better and not be turned in that position. But broadly speaking, I thought he was brilliant. And so it was just a professional win. I didn't think I saw anything massively worrying. I thought that, it was a match we needed to win. We did win. And there was a couple things. I thought it was actually one of Declan Rice's worst performances of the season. It seemed to me that he was carrying something. There was a time that he dueled with Morgan Gibbs-White and he was just outrun.
I think he is.
And it looks like it, but I thought he was poor. But again, he looked injured. But for the most part, mate, I mean, Jesus coming back, I think a frustrating performance. People talking about him and Lacazette in the same breath, I think, are a little bit more hyperbole, but he finally got his goal after some really poor efficiency in the first half, and he got his confidence back a bit. And so I think we are building steam, and I just took it as a performance of positives as opposed to really massive negatives.
Yep. I'm in line with a lot of your thinking. Shock. I think Looks like we record a lot together. Yeah, I think. I think in these situations, it's tricky because you sometimes want in any game analysis situation, it's trying to really pick it out, especially in these instant reactions, because they're really hard to sort of, you're caught up in the emotion of the game. You don't want to go too hard on something, or too easy on something. You want to try and get it right, but you don't necessarily know how to. And the thing I think I always try to come back to is patterns, and going, what are patterns throughout the season? Like, for example, the Saliba moment this evening. I've already seen some comments saying Saliba needs to work on his strength. It's not happened very often. It's not gonna happen, again, anytime soon. It might happen. I think Awoniyi gets a little moment of luck. The ball bounces off, hit the inside of his right leg. He doesn't know anything about it. Yes, okay, he maybe pushes Saliba off the ball. We've not seen it low. Not a big problem. We know Rice, that's not Rice's natural level. It wasn't his best game tonight. So those sorts of things I park in the sort of container of the game. And I go, look, those are the things that I'm like, that is what happened tonight. If we're still sat here in a couple of weeks' time and the same thing keeps happening, then let's talk about it. But I'm not particularly interested in talking about that. But Malachi, thank you so much for this, and this is exactly perfect timing. So I appreciate your contribution to the channel. Alex, you're still right. No goal with the opposition settles. Still something to look out for. Yeah, I think I'm still noticing patterns where we're up against facing low blocks, and I don't know whether we figure it out quick enough. However, this evening, what I will say is we figured it out a lot quicker than we have done before. The halftime, you saw Mikel running off, and I felt as though a couple of things happened. Firstly, we dropped back a little bit to allow a bit more space between the lines, allow for us to step onto us a little bit more and take that risk a little bit more, which we haven't been that risk. What's the opposite? Risk averse.
Risk averse is when you're too
what's the
afraid to
opposite?
make it
Risky.
risky.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we haven't been that risky yet enough this season. I like that Saka and Martinelli were finding themselves in much more central positions. That was happening in the first half, but I felt even more in the second half. We were taking more chances. We were bringing players closer together and getting them to combine. At the first half, I felt as though we were all very stood in our pockets and very stood, and those distances didn't close. We were bringing the 8 and the winger closer together. Bringing the fullback up, creating different dynamics and combinations, and eventually it came for us. So that has been a problem, and I look at the first half and I was frustrated for large parts of it. I won't lie, because it felt as though the same problems were happening again. But my frustration was that this is going to happen all game. Do you know what I mean? My frustration is, not another one of those games. But when at half time, Mikel comes back and we've changed how we approach the game, then I start to go, okay, we at least know what the problem is. Then we can start to approach this.
I mean, I think the tough thing with that settled play comment is, I mean, you're facing a Nuno Espirito Santos block. Really reminded me of
and
Wolves.
Forest did really well. Like and a lot of teams have done well against us, but Forest especially this season, I think did well.
You know what it was? I think that there was decision making in the first half that I feel as though it was everything but the goal, and that I think has been a story of the season.
Yeah.
But then I think it's been projected into this game a bit, where I do think the first half set you up for a lot of what we saw in the second half. The only thing that frustrates me is I do think in that first half, Zinchenko putting his foot on the ball slowed the tempo down quite a bit. And I thought he was playing at half speed, and we weren't seeing enough switches. He comes
to the ball too often. And I just wanted to add on one more thing very quickly. Sorry to cut you off. It was just, I wanted to say, as a thought experiment, I sometimes think, if a goal goes in, how would you feel? And ignore that, be happy because we scored a goal. But how would you feel about the performance if a goal went in? And if you're going, actually, it was a decent performance, we got the goal, that tells me that maybe it wasn't as bad as we sometimes might feel it was.
Yeah, I think so. And look, again, I feel that we didn't switch to Saka early enough. Like, I was looking at Saka that first half, and he was bright. And I'm like, why aren't we giving him the ball enough and early enough either? I kind of like your point about us going high early. I do feel as though that we didn't reach our kind of endpoints as quick in the second half, and we tried to vary it up a bit where our build-up tempo was quicker, but the way that we achieved final third entry was a little bit slower.
Yep.
I think that helped. It helped with a little bit more of the variation that we saw with, I think, Jesus doing a bit more work, I think, out wide, which helped. But I just think that Martinelli had a tough game, I have to be honest. I don't think he did great. And Ben White's decision-making on his crosses in the first half, I thought were a little bit wayward. He definitely had a little bit more spring, but he was telegraphing his cutbacks quite a bit. And I think that is something that he needs to work on, because he's got more variety in his locker. But in the first half, he wasn't showing it. And but beyond that, beyond those little tweaks, I thought it was. I think it was a fine performance in the first half. I felt as though a goal was coming. If you were really asking me, am I worried about Arsenal scoring? Not really. I felt as though that we were pushing and knocking on the door. And then the second half, we made some small tweaks, and it ultimately ends up being a pretty professional performance. And I do think that Trossard looked bright in his cameos. Not really much to take from a substitute appearance, but I think that he played well in his cameo. And I'm looking towards Liverpool and down the line, where you have to start asking yourself a question about kind of who gives a start between Martinelli and Trossard, because we've seen enough sample to know that Trossard hasn't been consistent enough when he's given a full 90, but when he is given cameos off the bench, he's quite sharp himself. But Martinelli isn't in the top form, and I think when you start looking at Liverpool, the game state suits a Gabriel Martinelli profile for sure. But you're kind of playing this balance of form versus what the game might lend to. So yeah, it wasn't a performance that I sat here really worrying. And I just think we're building steam. I was having conversations in group chats, and I think everybody's so upset at the fact that Arsenal aren't where they thought they would be at this point in time, that I think that I'm just seeing a little bit more hyperbole in terms of the actual performances, because beyond just looking at the stats, it read to me as a game where we penned in we penned in Forest. They played deep, they played to transition, they played to basically keep it 0-0 until the 75th minute, put on Owiniki and Alanga to hit on the counter. That was the game plan from Nuno Espirito Santos. And I think that Arsenal were doing a good job trying to probe, create. They did. They opened the deadlock 2-0. Annoying goal to concede, but if you're looking at a ground that you haven't been able to get points in the last couple of years, I think I'm taking that, taking that win and going on to the next one.
Yeah. I think this is the thing is it's really frustrating when we don't get over the line. But I think what happens is we ignore, the lines here. What we need to do, we get to about here and then we don't get over the line, and we ignore all of this work and try and rip all of that up. And I think you're right that there was just a couple of things. As you mentioned, switching to Saka a little bit earlier, but maybe Ben White's final ball, a couple of Martinelli's positions he's picking up, just little things, but a little tweak in the second half, and it all started to unravel. And I thought we did a lot better. A couple of frustrations, maybe, and again, maybe pattern-based frustration, not just this evening, the Saliba situation, or maybe Ben White's final ball, which I think is generally, think that's that Luton goal, is generally okay. Although he hasn't got as many assists as I'd maybe like him to, but it's maybe something to review. Jesus is finishing, but again, it's one of those things where it's like Zinchenko's defending. It's like, what's the point in discuss? We know. We knew before the game. We know after the game. We knew before the season. We knew last season. We know this isn't the best finisher. So for me, it's no longer, it's like putting someone, it's like, I don't know, it's like asking a baby to cook you dinner. It's like coming in.
Like asking Kieran Tierney to invert.
Yeah, it's like, but yeah, exactly. And then getting angry at Kieran Tierney that he can't do it. It's like at some point we have to look upwards and go, there's a different conversation to be had here. And it's about getting our proper finishers inside. That's the question. It's not about berating Jesus. If you come home and expect dinner to be cooked 10 nights in a row, there's a baby in the kitchen. You can't, what are you doing? So at some point you have to look at yourself. So I think, that was, but you can sit here and be sort of circumspect after the fact. It is frustrating in the moment. Let's be honest. It is really frustrating when he's hitting the post from there, and you're going, whatever I said, my nan could have scored that. Whatever you're saying in that moment, you must get frustrated, because as much as we can sit here and say, we knew that before, we knew that after, it's about system. I did find myself frustrated.
I'm more frustrated at the fact that I'm finding him lacking his ability to really create that separation when he receives off a dribble than I am on the finishing. Because I'll be honest, the entire prologue that you use, that I know what he is, I don't get upset when I see it. I'll be honest with you. And I expect it to happen. Like, I think he will do enough work out of the ball to facilitate others to get those chances, that I'm okay with that aspect.
Yeah.
The one thing that I'm frustrated with, and I think, when you start talking about the Lacazette comparisons and this idea of his physicality being different, I just feel as though when he's receiving the
So
ball, he's
you're
turning
saying that
quickly.
Jesus is worse than Lacazette. That's what I'm hearing.
No. Yeah, well, yeah, and he's fatter too, and he needs to
Yeah.
go on, how to lose 10 pounds in 10 days.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. I'm glad we cleared that up. Yeah. Great.
Glad. But no, but I just don't see the separation as consistent anymore. And I think that's what's more frustrating, because he's also playing a bit selfishly, because he's recognizing he's not finishing. So I'm seeing less of the between the box work that I know he doesn't have the in the box work. So that's the frustrating thing with Jesus. But it was nice, I'll be honest, that when that goes in, I see him a little bit more confident. And I just think, as much as it annoys me, a confident Jesus does wonders for the fluidity of the team. If you're talking about fluidity and your question mark is that Arsenal are too predictable, I think that Jesus at his core, whether he's physically not as good as he was last season, is the most chaos player in the front line, bar maybe Martinelli. But even then, I would say Jesus is the most chaos-filled player. So if we can channel that, then we can channel question marks a lot more. And so that's what I would like to build.
And it's this separation thing is a good point. I think it's another factor in what I would describe as the sort of the very rigid. Again, it's not that they're not moving in and out of formation. You can see Saka pop up inside, but then Jesus is just in his position. And I always think with positional rotation, it's not just about finding each other in different positions and just arbitrarily, Zinchenko, you go stand there and I'll go stand in Zinchenko's position. It's not about that. It's about the movement of what you do in the space that is created because of that, and the person you drag because of it, whatever. And part of that is Jesus coming out wide with the agility and aggression and the timing to pull the space available for a Saka, whatever. It's not just the fact that he does come outside. And yeah, I agree that the level of separation, the physical aggression maybe has been lost a little bit from Jesus, and maybe that's causing him to hold on to the ball a little bit too much, and that sort of explosiveness. You even see it. I don't know if there was a shot where he was talking to Smith Rowe. He's very gesticulative as a person. He's very sort of like this, and he had his hood up, and he pulled his hood off like this. I was like, Jesus. Like, if you watch someone in real life do that, he's got that explosive kind of quality as a person. And when and that's what's brilliant about it. And when you lose that as a player, I think you pull a lot out of our attack, because that's the reason it kind of came to life last season. So again, it's another factor, isn't it? It's another factor similar to Martinelli's positioning, another factor similar to Saka, being physically at the level, similar to how we look at our midfield and so on and so forth. I know we mentioned him a little bit earlier, but obviously a couple of people missed it. Smith Rowe, I really liked his performance this evening. I think this is one of those ones that's going to slightly go under the radar, and then people will watch a comp of it and go, "Oh, he actually had quite a good game," because it always happens that way. He was a little bit. He didn't own the game, but some nice moments. And I agree with you. I think at the moment, and again, and this is another factor of the sort of the how to unpick this massive lock of low blocks. I did feel he's still playing a little bit to instruction at times when he receives the ball. I'd love to see him go, do you know what? This isn't instructed, but I'm going to try something. I'm going to try it. And you saw a couple of moments, I think, at the beginning of the second half, end of the first half, around then, when he was trying those 1-2s around the box, and you're going, yeah, lovely. That can't be coached. That's the stuff that can't be coached. And I think he's probably so aware this is my first start. But I hope from a management perspective, someone's pulled him aside and gone, look, mate, we're starting you because we believe in you. Go out and play your game. Don't panic. What you would love to guarantee, and you can't guarantee this, but what you'd love to guarantee is you've got 5 games. Go and show us. You don't put all the pressure on yourself tonight. You obviously can't do that. But I hope in some way, Mikel Stuyvenberg, Carlos Cuesta has said, look, play your game. Don't worry too much, because that's when you're at your best. That's when we love you, is when you're not worried too much about, right, I've got to receive that pass, play that out there, all that sort of stuff, make sure it's circulated. Smith Rowe, when he brings that dynamic quality, that's when he's so brilliant. And you saw it coming, but I did feel he was a little bit stiff. But equally, that's his second start since May 2022, so it's understandable.
Yeah, it's what, almost approaching 2 years at this point. So I understand some of the hesitation. I don't like it. I still would say be braver, because that's who you are. That's what makes you great. Like when I look at Smith Rowe, what makes him great is that turn explosion, the
Yeah.
following your pass.
And we don't have them.
And we don't have that. And I think that he was showing signs of it. And I think the one thing that I really liked, mate, is there was a period in the second half he gets hit and he plays through the injury. And I was just saying in group chats, I go, that's so important for him as a player, because that resilience to contact is something that he has to get over in his own mind as part of his rehabilitation. You can get a player to be match fit and to be match sharp and to be ready to play. But until you basically get hit and you trust your body to get hit and then keep going, that is still something that any rehab specialist is gonna take. Basically, someone hitting you hard for you to get over it, and you can't replicate that. So I thought that was good. I did think that he had a good performance. I will stand by that. I think it was beyond just being positive in possession. I thought he was following his pass quite a bit, and I think that's something that our midfields don't do enough of. There's too much recycle first midfielders in our kind of 11, in my opinion. And I think that he's the one player that doesn't have that gut instinct.
Yes.
And so he's somebody that, that Benzema wall pass where he almost would drop deep, carry the ball, and run into the path of his wall pass. That's something that Emil loves. And we need that.
Sorry, yeah, on the wall pass thing, you can see when he receives the pass, you can see the message on the run as he's moving it. And I think that's something that Ødegaard and Havertz can play the wall pass, but they're going, I'm here as a facilitator for you. Smith Rowe saying, give me the ball so I can go and do this. And there is a difference in the sort of the message on the run. Yeah, there was a question from Fan, Fan, who said, do you think that performance warrants to start against Liverpool? I think because Liverpool are likely to be sat further up, because we're going to have more space to run into at times. I think because we're going to have time playing it essentially out and around their press. I'd love to see a Smith Rowe start. I don't know whether he will, but I think if we think the physical side of his game is coming back, if we can see more of the ideas of him on the transition, we've looked really good on the transition. I don't know if you saw that stat. I don't know if you're watching on TNT, but I was surprised by it. I thought we were doing all right, but I didn't realize how well we were doing. I think we're third in the league for goals on quick transitions, which, is not something we attribute to Arsenal. And so, and that's something that, maybe in the past we've seen as a weakness. So if it's becoming a strength of ours and Smith Rowe can be a part of that, which I think he can be, then more power to him.
You see that one pass in the first half when we break really quickly from deep, and Martinelli has that pass out to Saka. And I mean, to be fair, Forrest do brilliantly to cut that out in the first half. But that is something that I thought, wow, that's a very quick transition. It was clinical, and it was a great spot by Martinelli. And I thought, I think we can create these faux or false transitions a lot better in our play. And if you're going to ask people to run, and you're going to ask people in terms of that Liverpool game, is this a running game? Emil Smith Rowe's a runner. I would like that.
Because I think it's even a new phrase to me. Can you just define what false transitions are for people who might not know?
Yeah, I know, absolutely. So they're kind of, look, a typical transition is, let's say there's a 50-50 ball that you're going to break onto the, and you've got acres of space, and that's the transition that we know. A faux transition could be something like overloading a particular side on one area of the pitch, and then creating a wall pass that basically opens up space on the opposite side. Quick switch out. And so in that way, you basically draw your opponent to one side and then you switch. And that kind of ability to create a false transition, we call it, is just because there's no space. You've generated the space. You've always wanted to work it out left, but you bring everyone to the right and you create this transition. And I think
the way I describe it is like a transition is not predicted. A faux transition is predicted, almost, if you can put it that way.
It's manufactured. It's manufactured versus not, And so I think the question with Emil Smith Rowe, though, in general is, and for Liverpool specifically, is do I want to go double pivot or not? Which is a debate that I'm having in my mind right now, especially for Liverpool, because I think in regards to their press, and I think about people, being able to play out of that press, and who can we do to maximize that? I think Jorginho is somebody that I've really liked the cameos of recently, and I just don't know if that midfield balance between Declan Rice and Jorginho, assuming Partey's not fit, because he's not right now, I think that's the best bet for me if I'm looking at Liverpool and their press. I think that Emile Smith-Rowe I would love in transition on a game, and I think that he did really well, that he definitely deserves a start. But I think Liverpool is a game for me that I don't know if I'd like Emile and Odegaard as opposed to Jorginho, Declan Rice. Like that's the decision making for me.
I want to win that game. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to score more goals than Liverpool and win the match.
Which
I
is
think.
what we would like to do most games, instead of.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right, let's do some questions to finish the show. Jack Longar says, couldn't even edge with Alex's voice cracks today. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. So put your questions in, and we'll come to them as we finish the show. Robin McFadden says, I love Mikel, but his inability to play young talents that are more than deserving is a serious flaw. We had a little discussion about this, Robin, on our most previous podcast, so we won't do it here, but yes, have a look. Why Not says, what can we improve against LFC?
I think our build-up tempo really quick, and the quick switches out. I think that we are able to create false transitions really well, but I don't think that our build-up tempo is something that we always master. And I think, to be fair, Liverpool is going to be more Palace-like in terms of the type of game that we're going to be looking at. And I don't mean that easy in terms of the 5-0, but I mean in terms of a team willing to meet us. I think Liverpool will be willing to meet us more. And in that sense, we need to be clinical and we need to be really good between both boxes, because right now, I think that we're doing all the good work within the box or between the two boxes, but in the box is something that we still struggle with. So if we can maximize our efficiency in both boxes, then I think that we will do well.
Yeah, I think where the game is played on the pitch is going to be such a big question for against Liverpool, and it's going to be played a lot more around the centre circle than a lot of games for us. So I think maximizing, as you said, transitions, maximizing how we break out of those games, remaining defensively compact when they're in possession. But I'm pretty confident, especially at the Emirates. I'm pretty confident. So I think it'll be a different type of game. Specifically because of where the games, what do we have? We might be able to look at it now because Scott Willis might have posted it. But if you look at I know we joke about it, but if you look at where we play on the pitch in terms of our field tilt, it is, it's ridiculous.
Actually, I have a question for you. What do you think?
Go on,
Liverpool
George.
will do? What do you think Liverpool, if you were Klopp and you were approaching this Emirates, instead of what Mikel will do, what would you do to catch out this Arsenal team?
That's a good question. I would try and catch our high line. I would try and, if we're playing Zinchenko, I would try and play balls in behind there. And I'd probably play Jota in behind Zinchenko. I would focus on not necessarily trying to beat the press, because I think Arsenal has one of the best presses in the league. I would focus on going direct more often than not, and trying to win the second ball off in that sort of gap in between on the left-hand side, once the balls basically come off Saliba or Gabriel, either against Ben White or against Zinchenko. I try and take shots from distance, because I don't think that's something that Arsenal do particularly well with. I'd probably let Arsenal control the ball a little bit more, especially at home in their first phase, and not worry about pressing us, but probably go a bit more direct and really almost put the attacking energy and the physical energy into trying to win those second balls when we go direct. That's what I do.
Yeah, I think the mid block is going to be really important for Liverpool and really important for Arsenal. That's where the game's going to be won, in between in the middle third for me. I do think that it'll be more of a transition game than people expect, though. Like I feel that it's going to be hectic. And I think the one thing with kind of Liverpool in general is that it's a high scoring game, no matter how much I like it. And I think it's high scoring because we both lean into our emotions potentially. And I'm okay with that in a Salah-esque, like less Liverpool, generally speaking. But the one thing that I want us to do is we've got to be clinical in transitions, which, to be fair, you had mentioned it earlier, and I think it's becoming a thing with Arsenal. We are slowly becoming very efficient in transition. And I actually, for once, think that the story of this game won't be, can we break down this block? No, it's, can we maximize our transitions, and can we maximize transitions against us? Are we able to control those? So Zinchenko's a big call, mate. I don't want to dance around the subject. I think Zinchenko is a big call against Liverpool. It's a bigger call than Emile Smith-Rowe versus Jorginho or what we do in midfield, because I think that's the one guaranteed spot of our team that people look at and say that's a weakness. And I hate giving opposition a game plan to beat us in a sense. And it's not all on Zinchenko, by the way. It's not coming across where I hate him and he's useless, but in this particular game, come on, the switches from, Virgil van Dijk out to wide left is something that, Mikel highlights, everybody highlights. It's there. We all know it. We can't ignore it.
Yep. Milo Haynes says, do we initiate Slippy Whippy Pitchgate, Loopgate 2.0 for our game against LFC? Against at Anfield, it was very, very slippy. Very slippy. So I say we return the favour, George. What do you reckon?
I feel like whatever answer I give to
Milo, George doesn't engage in these silly conversations. They're far too silly. Come on. Let's do 2 more questions. So let's do this. Benjamin Ashley says, unpopular opinion, Havertz will be Arsenal's long-term striker. That is an unpopular opinion, Benjamin, because you are wrong. In my opinion, we've all got our opinions. Just, I think that one's wrong. Gideon Griffith says, Big Gabby at left back.
I'm not opposed, because I just feel like the way that we argue semantics in terms of his channel defending and what he pretty much already does, like even Zinchenko playing in midfield, he already defends the left back channel. So I just think that fans become a little bit strange with that. It's just, what does that impact have on our build-up? Because it does have an impact on our build-up. And I think that when you do play Big Gabby at left back, it's what does he receive in build-up? Can he receive? And you can't play him higher up the pitch, but you're going to ask him to at left back. So I think everything out of possession, check mark with Big Gabby at left back. But in possession, I don't know. And then you start to ask yourself, does it make sense for a little bit of a Kiwior Gabriel switch, which we've seen instances of, where does Kiwior bring the ball out at center back? And, you've got kind of Big Gabriel play left back out of possession, and then they swap roles when, you're in possession. Like, I think that could be something, but then that lends to a Jorginho in midfield. Like, those two things are linked to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would prefer that. I won't be on the fence. I prefer that over, for me, as Zinchenko as well. What do you prefer?
Never be on the fence.
I'd like to put you to the sword.
No. I will remain on the fence. I'll remain on the fence. You're not allowed to be. Milo Haynes says, do we go the other way and do dry pitch gate? Listen, whatever happens with the pitch, Milo, here's what my game plan is. Score more goals than Liverpool score. I don't want to overcomplicate it. I know we try to get technical on this channel, but and I don't want to go too far down that road.
What's the Dyche quote? Put more in there.
Kick the ball out of that end, stick it in that end. Exactly. It's all that matters. Pleasure as always, George. We'll have to finish there. We've gone over our half an hour. But thank you so much for watching the instant reaction. Check out the Cannon Podcast on YouTube if you would be so kind. Check us out on Patreon. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Keep it out of that end, put it in that end. Good advice for life as well. And thank you all for being here.
Oh, we're getting canceled.
That's the end of it. Bye-bye.